All right, Rabbi, say good morning. Let us begin. We have beautiful Mishnayos ahead of us today. We are in today, Mishna Yomi, Berachos, Perek Dalid, Mishnayos Vav and Zayin. Chapter 4, Mishnayos 6 and 7. Very beautiful Mishnayos. Haya Yoshe Besvina, O Bekaron, O Ba'asda. Listen to this case. A person is sitting on a boat. Karon is a wagon. Asta, interestingly enough, if you listen to this, the Bartanura describes it, and he says, Eitzim harbe kshurmu dakim yachad. You have a lot of branches or a lot of pieces of wood that are tied together. Umashitim osam banar, and you float it on the water, or in other words, what we would call a raft. So a person is on a boat, a person is on a wagon, or a person is on a raft. Shabbos say, so once again, I'm davening. Now, the issue over here is most of these items, again, a person can't simply get off. So what does a person do in terms of tefillah? So such a beautiful statement of the Mishnah. Going back to what we learned yesterday, that although ideally I should orient my body in the direction of the Beis HaMikdash, in a situation where a person can't do this, can't direct my body, I can direct my heart. So ultimately, direct your heart towards the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the Holy of Holies. So again, in the absence of the ability to orient my body in the direction of Yerushalayim, I can direct my heart in that direction. That's the end of the Mishnah Vav. Beautiful Mishnah. And again, going in line with the theme that we saw, we spoke this out, the hashkaf of this idea yesterday. Don't have to repeat it again today. We'll say Mishnah Zayin. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah Omer. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, Ein tfilas hamusafin ela bechaver ir. We'll say a very interesting idea. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, Musaf is only a congregational tefillah and is not davened biyachid. In other words, the only time you daven Musaf is if you have a minyan in shul, b'tzibor. But if you're an individual, you do not daven Musaf. And Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's logic is like this. He holds that halacha l'maaseh, the concept of tefillah, of the individual's obligation of tefillah, is limited to tefillos which correspond to daily offerings. So therefore you have Shacharis, which corresponds to the Tamid Shal Shachar, the morning communal offering. You have Mincha, which corresponds to the Tamid Shal Ben Abayim, the afternoon daily offering. And then you have Ma'ariv, which again is not really obligatory in a pure halachic sense, but which corresponds ultimately to the burning of the fats and limbs. But Musaf, the Karban Musaf, which is not corresponding to a daily communal offering, halacha l'maisa is not obligatory. It's not incumbent upon the individual, only upon the tzibor. So if you're in shul, the tzibor will daven musaf, the congregation, but the individual does not. The chachamim disagree. They say no, bechaver ir, v'shalo bechaver. The chachamim say no, you daven musaf no matter what. You daven musaf whether you're an individual, you daven musaf whether you have a minyan. In other words, chachamim disagree. Halacha l'maaseh, there is always an obligation to recite musaf. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Mishmo, Rabbi Yehuda says in his name, Kol makom sheyesh chaver ir, hayochid mut poter mitfilas hamusafin. So I said this is very interesting. Rabbi Yehuda has a little bit of a different shita. Right? So Rabbi Yehuda, now again, what's happening over here is Rabbi Yehuda has an alternate version of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. That's what's happening here. And he says, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's shita is like this. Wherever there is a minyan, right, wherever there is a tzibor, and the tzibor is davening musaf, that tzibor ultimately exempts the individual. That tzibor exempts the individual. So the Gemara says, the Bartanura explains over here, he says, Ol Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Ol Rabbi Yehuda, Ein yochid pater elikishu makom asar sheshas potro. So we'll say, here's what's interesting. Two versions of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, one version of the Chachamim. First version of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is that there is no individual obligation of musaf. Rather, musaf is a congregational prayer. If there's a tzibor, there's musaf. If there's no tzibor, there's no musaf. Second version of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, which is the version according to Rabbi Yehuda, is that no, if there's a tzibor, the tzibor will exempt the individual. But if there's no tzibor, if there's no congregation, then the individual will be obligated, right? Then the third position, really second/third position, the position of the Chachamim No. Musaf is just like any other tefillah. There's an obligation upon the individual whether there is a tzibor or there is not a tzibor. Obviously, if there's a tzibor, if there's a congregation, it's always wonderful to daven b'tzibor. But Allah Chalamayis, if there is no tzibor, the obligation is upon the individual. And Abba say, who do we paskin like? We know we pass like the Chachamim, that the tefillah of Musaf is a tefillah which is incumbent both upon the individual as well as upon the tzibor. We'll stop over here for today. Meretz Hashem, this was the end of the parak. Tomorrow we begin the fifth parak of Maseches Berachos. Meretz Hashem b'sha'at tova u'mitzlachos. Shkoyach.